Hello and welcome back to the Andrew Plays channel. I realise this is a little bit late, but we've got Premier League predictions. I did make these last week before the first weekend. I haven't changed anything, so these are my thoughts before the first weekend. However, due to lots of things going on, I didn't get a chance to actually record it. So we're going to get straight into it and predict from bottom to top the Premier League table. There's a couple of tasty ones that I'm sure will cause some anger in the comments. Before we get too much far into it, again, I've had a bit of time off. I'm very much in and out of being home at the moment. But the support on the channel has been absolutely insane. I think 177 subscribers when I checked not long ago. Absolutely ridiculous. Thank you if you're new here. Thank you if you've been here for a long time. All the support is massively appreciated. Thank you very much. So let's start off with 20th position. We have Watford. Now, this looks a bit silly when Villa have just lost 3-2 to them. But I've got Watford bottom because I just feel like they haven't got enough about them. I could be wrong based on this first weekend, but I think Ismaila Sarr is really good. But I don't think Troy Deeney is going to cut it in the Premier League. I know he didn't start on Saturday. But there's something about Watford that I just don't think is quite going to be enough for them. And then in 19th, I've gone with Norwich. And again, that's a team where they obviously got promoted a couple of years ago, got relegated. They've come straight back up. But I haven't really seen much of them that's changed. They've lost Buendia to Villa as well. And I think, if anything, that's weakened them a bit. Teemu Pukki, I think, established last time round he's a championship striker. That might be controversial, but I just don't see him as a Premier League striker. And the final team that I've got going down is a team that have sold a guy who gets you tons of goals, and I'm not convinced they've replaced him adequately, and that is Southampton. I feel like they've been a bit of a dip for the last couple of years. They've been beaten 9-0 twice in those 2 years as well. And then Danny Ings leaving. They've brought in Adam Armstrong. I know he got a goal at the weekend just gone, but I still don't think he's going to replace Danny Ings in the way that they need him to. I think they're going to really struggle. In truth, I could see it being either or of these, but I think Southampton will be the one that go down. But it also could be Brighton, because the big thing about Brighton is they struggle to score goals, and that hasn't improved because they haven't, as far as I'm aware, they haven't signed a new striker. So if you're not going to sign a new striker when you don't score enough goals, then to me you're putting yourself in a relegation battle. You need goal scorers to stay up. I'm just pulling up the results. They got a 2-1 win against Burnley, who I very nearly put down in this section as well, because I don't think they've improved much for a long time. And there's those couple of teams, Southampton, Brighton, Burnley, they've all kind of started to stagnate down the league. I think within 2 or 3 seasons, unless there's something done about it, I think Brighton will go next year. I think Burnley might go with them, depending on the strength of the teams that come up, of course. Then 16th, we've got Brentford. So I see them surviving. I think they've got Ivan Toney. He looks like he's going to be a very good player. They obviously got the 2-0 win against Arsenal. Saw that coming a million miles away. I don't know why. I just really thought Arsenal were going to lose that game from the start. And yeah, it turned out to be correct. I even think now I might have it might have been harsh on Brentford in a way, putting them 16th. I think that they've got goal scorers. That's the difference for me. When you look at them against those 4 teams below them, The thing they've got is goal scorers. Therefore, I think they've got enough about them to stay up. Then we've got Newcastle in 15th. They've started with a 4-2 loss, where they looked really poor in the second half in particular. But I think with Joe Willock coming in, I think he was a revelation for them at the end of last season. I reckon they'll be in a relegation battle, but I think they've got just enough about them to survive. Steve Bruce, not a pretty manager, but I think he's got enough to get the job done. They've got goals in Callum Wilson in particular. And yeah, I think they're back free as well with Shah in there. I think they've got a solid defence. I see them being a team that just kind of draw a lot. But I think they'll do enough to stay up, in my opinion. 14th, we've got Burnley. If anything, I'm probably predicting them to be... I'd probably swap them and Brentford, if I'm being honest, if I was to redo this. But I felt that was unfair to do. But I would probably move Burnley down because I don't think they've even signed anyone. And this is what they've done for a while. They don't spend money. And eventually that's going to catch up with them, I think. Yeah, they do well with what they've got. But they are just 4-4-2, direct football. And it's not pretty. It doesn't have to be. Don't get me wrong. It's done a job for them, but I think eventually they need to do something. I think this year they'll struggle for goals. I think they always make it a tough place to go to, but I think this might, unless they do some big movement next summer, then I think they're going to be really, really struggling to hang on next year. In 13th, we've got Palace. I'm putting a lot of faith in Vieira there, which I am aware of because quite unproven. He didn't do a lot in France. Did all right in the MLS, but don't know how much that translates to Premier League success. They've still got Wilfried Zaha, which is massive. If he leaves, then they're done. I think that they'd really struggle without Zaha. But I just see them, not so much that they're good. I just think they've got more about them than the teams below them. I think they're kind of just slightly better than those other teams, therefore they'll finish 13th, not necessarily on them being strong enough that if these teams below them strengthened, I think Palace would be in massive trouble. I think they're there because they've just got enough bits of certain individuals like Zaha that can just get them a few results, and recently they've been really sturdy defensively, which makes me think they'll probably have enough to hold on. They started their season with a 3-0 loss, but it was to Chelsea, so not really much into that. In 12th, and this will be a controversial one, I've got Leeds, and I don't know what it is. I think it might be a bit of bias because I'm a United fan, but I feel like a lot of teams, they come up, they have this really good year, then second season syndrome kicks in. I don't think they're going to suffer in the way Sheffield United did, for example. I think there will be a drop-off, though, because the high-intensity football they play, I feel like they haven't got the squad depth to do that all year round in the Premier League. I know they did for most of last year. They had a bit of a drop-off towards the end. And that's what I think will happen here. I think they'll drop off a bit because I think it's a lot of effort that goes into their football. They do play good high pressing football. Yeah, they play entertaining football, as you saw at the weekend. Yes, they lost 5-1, but that's where I think they suffer, is when teams figure it out how to exploit them. I think they will get exploited, and it's whether Bielsa will change his philosophy, because that's his thing. This is what he does. He doesn't change his philosophy very much. I think if he gets caught out, he's got to adapt. And the 5-1 United got against them might be something where he needs to look at that and think, how can I prevent that happening, particularly in those big games. I think he needs a plan B, which I'm not convinced he's got, which is why I think they've not levels of Sheffield United drop off, but I think they will drop off just a little bit. This one's not going to be fun. Arsenal in 11th. Now, I realise this is going to cause some trouble, but I don't rate them. Everyone talks about like the results against the Big Six. Don't get me wrong, I know they've got a fair few results against United recently, but I just don't see Arsenal as part of the Big Six anymore. I see Leicester as part of the Big Six more than I do Arsenal. I think this year Ben White's come in, that should be a good signing, but they're still playing with this midfield that's got Xhaka in. Partey, I know he's out for a couple of weeks. Maybe in the long term he'll improve them enough to push them up a bit further. But watching them against Brentford, there was no fight. They didn't look like a team that believed they could win that game at any point in that game. And I really do think they're going to struggle. Nothing against Arteta. I think he's doing all right as a manager. I think the team is the problem. There's nobody in there that picks them up when they're struggling. Maybe Ben White can do that. But there's something about Arsenal that I just think they're in for a really tough season by Arsenal standards. I don't see them getting anywhere near Europe. I think they need a massive overhaul, similar to what United did 5 years ago. They just need a massive overhaul of players, in my opinion. In 10th, I've gone with West Ham because I think that they've got a really strong squad at the moment. Antonio is scoring goals for fun. They've got Declan Rice, holding midfielder, one of the best holding midfielders in the league at the moment. And he dictates play really well. He did really well with England in the Euros. I think the fact that they've got European football is what makes me think they're going to drop off this a little bit, because I don't think they've got the squad depth to deal with having European football to play. Having said that, obviously they could get a really tough group and then end up out of Europe by December, in which case I think they can then push on after January. I think if they have a Europa League run, I'd probably knock them down to like 12th. But if you're a West Ham fan, would you trade a lower finish in the league? Still safe. I don't think West Ham will be in trouble of relegation at all. But would you trade, a 12th place finish instead of, where were you last year? 6th, I think. Would you trade that for a run to like the Europa League semi-finals? That might be a bit ambitious, but if you get the right draw in the Europa League, it's possible. It's absolutely possible. If they get Lingard back, then absolutely I think they've got that in them to finish 10th and have a decent Europa League run. I think it's the squad depth that's the problem. 9th, I have Wolverhampton Wanderers. And after the first weekend, I'm a bit less convinced. They've not really made any big signings. They've just kind of, Rui Patricio's gone to Roma. And they've brought in a new keeper, I can't remember his name or where he's from. They've brought in the Benfica manager to replace Nuno. I think that's good. I think Nuno was getting a little bit stale. I think he'd been figured out a bit. I think Wolves this year, they've got no European football. Last year, they didn't have European football. They had the late summer, like United did, and they were the only ones, I think, just those two. No, Arsenal as well. No, that was this year. Never mind. Wolves, I think, will finish 9th. I think they've got a Raul Jimenez hopefully bounces back from that horrific head injury that he had. I think he's got goals in him. In 8th, I've gone with the team that I think has had one of the strongest transfer windows, Aston Villa. Yes, they've lost Grealish, but they did a really smart thing. They spent the Grealish money before they sold Grealish, so that because if they don't, they probably don't get one of those players that they've bought in, because as you've seen in the past, you sell a player for 100 million and then you go for Leon Bailey for 30 million. Well, now he's going for 40 million, and Burn Diaz goes up 5 million as well. I think they did really well with Emilio Martinez in goal. Absolutely phenomenal goalkeeper. They've now got Axel Tuanzebe on loan from United, and I rate him incredibly highly. They might be a little bit biased, but Ashman, he's done his predictions. Go check his out as well. He's a Villa fan. He rates Tuanzebe really highly as well. So I think they've got quite a few good defenders there. They've got Buendia and Bailey. Bailey, I think, will do really well for them. And I honestly think Villa could be 6th or 7th, depending on one transfer in particular. But in 7th, I've gone with Everton. And those are the two in particular that could be either way. It could very easily be Villa 7th, Everton 8th for me. I've gone with Everton finishing 7th because it just seems to be what they do. Yeah, they finish there a lot. They've started the season well. 3-1 win against Southampton. I think Calvert-Lewin gets the goals. I think that's a big difference maker. Thinking about it a bit more, Aston Villa now have Danny Ings. So with that in mind, I probably would have put Villa in 7th. Now that I think about it. Obviously, I'm not going to. But I'd like to go with the caveat there. I'd probably move Villa up to 7th with Danny Ings and Ollie Watkins as well. I know he missed the first weekend. I think he's out injured. But those two, there's goals in them. I think they're quite similar players, but it does mean, if Danny Ings has a bit of a tough spell, you throw Ollie Watkins in. Or even if one of them's having a tough game, you just sub them. Like for like, but maybe it's just somebody having an off game. Everton, I think Calvert-Lewin has the potential to do really well for them again. Hamed's a bit unhappy there. That probably gives me more incentive to have said Villa would have finished 7th, but it is what it is. In 6th, I've gone with Harry Kane. Basically Harry Kane FC. Tottenham. Fantastic win for them yesterday against Manchester City. But there's something about Tottenham that I just don't think they're that good. I think they've got some good players. Son is phenomenal. But then you've got a bit of a dodgy defence. I think Luis is starting to go a bit shaky in goal. And there's something about their midfield that I don't like. I can't put an exact finger on it. I'm just going to have a look at what their midfield was yesterday. But there's something about Tottenham that I'm just not a fan of. And it's hard for me to put my finger on it. Part of it is probably Eric Dyer playing centre-back yesterday. I don't like Eric Dyer. I don't rate him at all. Midfield, they've got Højbjerg, Skip and Ali. Ali seems to be... He had that fantastic season a few years ago and he's never really reached those levels again. Maybe under Nuno he can, but I doubt it because Nuno prides himself on kind of defensive solidity. I can't see Ali being given the freedom that he needs to create as well to get that season that he had a few years ago. I think we'll see similar this year. I think Ali will be a bit limited, similar to what United players were under Mourinho. They're basing it on a solid defense. I think that will do them well against the big teams. I think I could see Tottenham picking up quite a few wins against the big teams, similar to the one against City. But in general, I think they'll just drop off a little bit. Now we've got the final team to miss out in European football. And oh boy, is this a controversial one. Liverpool. Now, hear me out. First of all, there probably is a little bit of bias seeping in there. However, I think at the moment, particularly at the time of recording, I didn't know how Van Dijk was going to come back from that injury. It was a really bad injury, and it can really shake someone's confidence. And I hope that isn't the case for Van Dijk, because he is a phenomenal player. I hope he comes back full of confidence and doesn't doubt himself. But I know it's very easy for players to do. I think my biggest thing with Liverpool is their midfield, because yes, they've got Henderson, but Wijnaldum's gone. And to be completely honest, I thought it for a while with Liverpool. Their lineup against Norwich, they had Milner, Oxlade-Chamberlain, and Keita. Milner has been a phenomenal engine, but how long can he keep that up for? He's 35 now, I think. I think they need to start resting him a bit more. And my big thing is I'm not convinced they've got the right players to rest him for. I think Keita hasn't come in and quite been as good as they expected, but he's done solid for them. But then Oxlade-Chamberlain, I don't rate him at all, if I'm being completely honest. Maybe some of their midfielders, Fabinho, could do well for them. I also, and this is another one that's a bit controversial, I don't rate Matip. I think if they can have Van Dijk and Gomez fit together, then I probably would knock them up to 4th. But I think Liverpool they've got this really strong first 11. But I look at their bench a lot of the time, and I don't really think a lot about it. Origi, yes, he comes on and gets some important goals for them. But then you've got Minamino, he never really looked that good. They have strengthened with Jota last year. I think he's a very good improvement there. But outside of that, I look at it and I just don't see the strength in depth. And I think for Liverpool, that's something they need to improve. Because for them to compete on the Premier League and Champions League front, I know they did the year they won the title. But I just get this feeling that they're not quite going to have it this year. I think they're going to be careful with Gomez and Van Dijk coming back from their injuries. I can see that going against Liverpool. And the team that I've gone finishing just above them in 4th, and similar to Everton and Villa, this could go either way. I've gone with Leicester. Finally getting the Champions League spot. They've missed out on it for 3 years, I think, now. They've come so close. I think twice they've gone into the final day. Even in the top 4. I think last year they weren't. I think they were just outside it. But I think Leicester this year will have enough about them. They've not really lost any of their key players, which is something they can't do. There's these rumours of James Maddison going to Arsenal. Can't understand that at all. To me, as I say, I think Leicester are more of a top 6 team than Arsenal are. If Maddison goes to Arsenal, that is a step down. I don't know why he would do it, if I'm being completely honest. And that may cause controversy in the comments. I don't care, I stand by what I say. In 3rd, and I did this list just before Lukaku signed, I've got Chelsea. And part of the reason was I didn't know they were going in for Lukaku. In truth, I think the top 3 could be in any order. I think it will be a 3-way title battle. And they could finish in any order for me. I would potentially push Chelsea up to 2nd. There's still that one transfer that I'm holding out on. I think Lukaku will come in and he'll get goals. My concern for Chelsea would be, will there be enough goals? Because yes, Lukaku will score you goals, but then once I get past him, Pulisic, I don't think he's done well, but I don't think he's ever really become what they hope. Or at the moment, he's still very young, but I think he needs to contribute more for me. Then you've got Mason Mount, who he does score goals from midfield. Their back three, there's something about that I don't like. They started with Rudiger, Christensen, and Chalobah. I don't like Christensen, and again, I'm not sure if there's a reason for it, but he just looks a bit shaky to me a lot of the time. Marcos Alonso, great wing back. If Thirst can play left back, that's going to cause him a lot of problems. Cesar Azpilicueta, rate him very highly. They've finally sorted the goalkeeper situation out with Mendy. Havertz, I think he could kick on this year, and if he does, then I'd probably say Chelsea could finish second, but again, they could finish first, second, or third for me. And that's the same for the entire top three. And now we've got the top two. And I would like to preface this. This is as it stands, how I think it will finish. I think this is the year United win the league. Unless City sign Kane. If City sign Kane, you can swap those two around. That's an official prediction that I'm including here. If City sign Kane, I'm predicting Man City to win the title. I'm not convinced they're going to get that signing over the table, though. Over the table? I've got this weird feeling that Tottenham are going to hold firm and refuse to let Kane go this year. I could be wrong. But I think at the moment, City only have Gabriel Jesus as a recognised striker. And I don't quite think he's able to lead the line for them long term. Yesterday they started Ferran Torres up front. And like I say, him again, I don't think he's quite got enough about him to lead a line. Grealish, I think, if he gets Kane up front, he'll create so many goals for Kane. But that's what I think will be the difference. He'll create chances for this City team. I think they bring Kane in, he'll create goals. Because I think they're missing a real goal scorer, a 20-goal-a-season striker. And I think they got away with it last year because United had this down phase in like January, February. Without that, I think they wouldn't have won the league. United this year, Sancho, Varane, they were going into the off season. Everyone said United need a right winger and a right winger and a centre back and a holding midfielder. We haven't got the holding midfielder at the moment, but we have got the right winger and the centre back, which is why I think we beat Leeds 5-1 yesterday. That was without Rashford, without Sancho, without Van der Beek. I think without Varane. I think once they come in, then you'll be sorted. But we need those. We just need that one holding midfielder. I think holding midfielder for United or Harry Kane for City. Title race is done. But until one of those happens, that's my predicted table. Let me know what you think down below. Have I gone completely off the rails? Has my United bias took over? Possibly. But let me know down below what you think. Who do you think is going to get relegated? Who do you think is going to be in the top four? Who's going to be the champions? My top goal scorer, I'm going to go with Lukaku or Kane. Again, that's the caveat. If Kane signs for City, he's top goal scorer. Otherwise, Lukaku. My player of the season, it's biased. I'm going with Bruno Fernandes. I think the most clean sheets, Most clean sheets is a tough one. I think it might be United this year. With again, this is probably a little bit of bias, but I think most people have that little bit of bias. I'm very willing to admit it. I am biased towards United, but that's part of being a fan in a way. Leave your comments down below. Like, subscribe if you're enjoying the content in the channel. Let me know if you want to see more prediction stuff. Might do a Champions League thing as well. And thank you very much for watching.